I've known Dean for a long time. He's been involved in many successful projects around the world, and he is now CTO and Senior VP of RFID Solutions for SML. And I'm going to bring him up here, and he's going to introduce his panelists. So please join me in welcoming Dean. That's great.
I guess, Mark, I should have picked my own walk-up music. I would have done something like Baby Shark or something. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here with my panelists that we've brought forward. The partnership with RFID Journal, I also want to thank over the years, has been tremendous. Real quick intro of our company. 5,000 employees, headquartered out of Hong Kong. We have offices working RFID in over 25 countries, produce billions of tags, encoded RFID tags a year for retailers and brand owners, and have close to 3,000 stores operating around the world using our software. Today we have the distinct opportunity of listening to a retailer and a brand owner sourcing team who have implemented RFID and in the process of a longer journey. And so join me in welcoming Jack Nestell, CIO of MyDyer, and also Johan Stenstrom, who is a supply chain manager for Stadium out of Sweden. Okay, guys, let's start off by each of you kind of just introducing yourself and your company and helping the audience understand who you are, and then we'll get into a little bit more about the nerdy stuff around RFID. So go ahead, Johan.
Yeah, so my name is Johan Stenstrom, and I work for Stadium. That's a market leader sports retailer in Scandinavia. We have about 500 million turnover, dollars that is, and 4,000 employees, and we push through about 35 million pieces each year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack?
My name is Jack Nestell, and I joined MyDyer about 2.5 years ago to lead their ERP implementation and systems implementation. MyDyer is a global sourcing and manufacturing company. We have our corporate headquarters is in Long Beach, California, along with a operational facility. We have an office in Korea as well, and with a global presence. We do a lot of work out of Asia and Latin America as well.
Great. So these gentlemen have, and their companies have a unique perspective. They come from they're on different journeys. They've come from different places in the use of item level RFID. And so I think one of the things that'd be useful for the audience, guys, is for you to share a little bit about what that journey looked like. And Johan, if you could kind of share, you were here last year.
Yeah.
You had basically in the middle of a pilot.
Yeah.
And you've had the unique perspective of finishing the pilot, going through tender, but before you could go through tender on the solution and the tags, you also had to convince your C-level folks that this was worthwhile of an investment, and a big investment for a company like Stadium. Can you kind of share a little bit about that journey?
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit, we during the pilot, the pilot was all about proving the technology. And we entered that with an inventory accuracy of around 65% in our pilot stores, and we went up to 97% accuracy. And we needed to build trust regarding the technology, and that was key to getting the board to understand that the technology works. And they would ask me questions like, how do we know that this works? Could we do a manual inventory to check if the technology works? And yeah, you could do that, but that would be like comparing a GPS with a map and a compass, kind of. You just
Great
need
analogy.
to, yeah, you just need to trust the technology, and it works and it delivers.
And what were some of the things that were the pain points that drove you to moving forward with item level RFID in all your stores?
Yeah, we started to back up a little bit here. Stadium was founded by two brothers that were into sports. They were really passionate about sports, about the products. They weren't passionate about processes and logistics. As soon as you say supply chain, and they kind of wander off. So we started with having the understanding of an inventory accuracy of 98%. That's what our belief was that we were. So why would we need RFID if we are at 98%? But actually, when we were investigating that and realizing that that's actually the financial accuracy, it's not the
What do you
inventory.
mean by financial accuracy?
The financial accuracy, that would be like we're having all the plus in an inventory, all the plus stock and all the minus stock, that will equal out. And that would be like driving in a car down the road and you crash one to the left and one to the right, and you would believe that the car is fine. But in real world, it's not fine at all. And that was the same thing with this process. So it was hard coming to realizing that, coming from a belief of 98%, realizing we're at about 70%. And that was a pain point, really. So what was the question? I talked a lot now.
Oh, just about, what were the pain points that you had that were driving you that's driven you to make this decision to adopt? And again,
Yeah.
why the C-levels in the company decided that, hey, Johan, you guys are onto something. This could help our business.
Yeah. So when we were realizing, okay, we're not at 98%, and that's key in this, I think, to look at yourself and realizing and accepting, okay, we are at the 70%. We were about 70%. And then if we're trying to move into omnichannel and those kind of things, realizing we can't do that at 70%. And we can't meet a customer demand with an inventory accuracy of 70%. We can't be cost effective with our stores are kind of big now because we're overstocked because we can't trust the system. So all of those were pain points, and then we realized we need to do something fast, and RFID was the technology, and the business case, the pilot proved that, and we went up to 97% in that pilot.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jack, how about you? I mean, a little different perspective coming from where you guys are at as a sourcing company.
Yeah, so for us, we're a very strategic, forward-thinking organization. So we really wanted to put ourselves in a position to offer more value added to our customers. And we know that we have a lot of our customers are focusing on considering RFID, and they're doing proofs of concepts, and I think they're on.
This is the retailers that buy product from
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to position ourselves to have in our toolkit the ability to implement RFID throughout the entire supply chain, but then to be able to offer product to our customers that was RFID enabled, so that they could leverage that the RFID technology within their DCs and within their stores. So that was really the motivating driver in terms of our desire to implement an RFID solution.
Okay.
And so internally, we receive orders from our customers in units. We create products in units. We invoice in units. But when the product was reaching our warehouse, we were receiving it in boxes and bags and bales. And so there was an inefficiency there that it was creating for us internally. And we felt that if we can increase that efficiency in the way that we receive our product in terms of invoice, or in terms of item at the item level, we could improve our efficiencies and thereby offer that savings to our customer. And then the other reason that we wanted to implement RFID is because at the time, at the exact same time we were implementing RFID, we were going through a pretty large-scale ERP implementation, including AWS.
Do you recommend doing that, your people in the audience, to do that at the same time?
It was challenging. There were some unique scenarios there. I don't recommend it if you don't have to, but we made a choice to do it as a part of our initial rollout. One of the challenges with that is, we felt pretty good about the physics of it and the RFID solutions design in terms of the technology. We felt that was handled, but a big piece of trying to do both at the same time was this idea of just creating the organizational culture and creating the mindset and the readiness and the transformational leadership to be able to take on both and manage your internal resources. That was probably the biggest challenge for us. It wasn't necessarily that the RFID piece was in pretty good hands. So my job as CIO was to focus more on the internal resource management, transfer of knowledge, conceptual training, functional training, business process re-engineering. So that was probably the biggest challenge.
And from Johan, from a change standpoint, I mean, Jack hit on it inside the business. What kind of change did you see as you went through the journey that you've been on with your store team and with the other people, stakeholders in the business? What change did you see in their mind as they went through that process with you guys?
If you talk about stores and sales personnel, they went from having they were confident. Before starting the pilot, I would go and ask, so are you replenished in this section? And they are proud of that and say, yeah, of course, I am replenished. When doing this pilot and looking at the data, you could see that no, we aren't replenished. And that realizing that was to realize that, okay, we are not replenished, and that was a turning point for employees, the staff as well, that okay, here's a rack of t-shirts, and do I have a nice size run? No, I have no medium, I have 2 extra large. But I can't see that, but the technology can see that. So doing that pilot, and when we turned on the replenishment, we could see that we have hundreds of SKUs, not on the sales floor, but they were in the back stock. So that was kind of a turning point when getting staff realizing that this will help you to be replenished. They started trusting the technology, and that was a key thing. When you go from forcing the technology and say you're going to use this, and you could see it in their eyes when that changed to wanting to use that technology, and then I knew, okay, this is going to work out fine.
When you transition from pilot to rollout, what's the story you told me about when you stopped the pilot before you started rollout? What did the operators in the store say?
They were quite angry when I came and took the equipment from them, and they were arguing, can't we, okay, we'll pay ourselves, can we continue this pilot? And so, sorry, it doesn't work that way. So when I took that equipment, they were really, they were angry that they couldn't keep it. So really, they got to want to use the technology. Yeah.
That's great. Jack, from your standpoint, you're in distribution centers is where you implement it. And what were some of the challenges, what was some of the operational change that had to take place that you led there at MyDyer through that process? And maybe describe the process before and the process after to try to give perspective to people. Yeah.
So, as I'd mentioned, we receive product in bales and in boxes and in bags, and it was a pretty manual effort, time, money, and effort to validate the receipt, and validate the product. So, what we did is we implemented a tunnel, an RFID tunnel, conveyor coming off the truck, ran the bales through the RFID tunnel, and that would tag and associate every single product by RFID tag to that particular bale. and then that bale was then placed on a pallet, and then we engineered an RFID tunnel, drive the high-low through the tunnel with the pallet, and then that would associate the bales that are on the pallet. So we drastically simplified our inbound receipt process.
What were they doing before?
They were manually counting.
We're all
every
friends
bale.
here, so it's okay.
They were manually counting every bale.
Yeah.
I mean, so time, money, and effort-wise, it was a significant process. Sharpie marker on the bale, validating every single bale, and it was pretty time-intensive in terms of FTE time on the floor. And that's to summarize the process.
Yes.
So what the new process allowed us to do is we identify the tags in the bale when it comes off the truck, goes through the conveyor, gets put on a pallet, goes through the second drive-through tunnel. That does the association of the bale to the pallet. So now in our system immediately, we have the association of every item and every bale on every pallet, and it's immediately. And we designed an interface that went right from our RFID solution to our AWS solution. So right away, it just drastically simplified the inbound receipt process at an item level. And then from there, it was just a matter of transfer, put away to rack, roll, bin location in our warehouse, which is just a couple of scans, and we were done. So significant savings and internal operational efficiencies.
And Jack, in your case, and I'll ask you the same question in a minute, Johan, is that how did implementing the item level RFID change the way you service your customers? For you, Jack, it's a downstream customer that's receiving product coming in from your factories through your DC. Yep. How did it impact their life?
Well, I think two things. For those customers that are currently leveraging RFID, they received RFID enabled, tagged, ready to go when they received it to their DC or to their warehouse. They were leveraging the RFID technology that we started further downstream, right? But the other thing is it allowed us to make sure it's not just the inbound side, but the outbound side could leverage RFID technology as well to make sure that every product is the correct product is in the correct shipment on the correct truck, going to the customer, sent through ASN. So it improved the accuracy of our shipments to our customers, making sure that there were no issues, no mishaps with the shipment of the product to the customer.
How about you, Johan? Your customers are actually consumers that walk into your store wanting a down vest or a pair of shoes. So how did it impact the servicing them?
Yeah, that's a huge impact in when we are at 70% accuracy. We can't meet the customer when they want the item. We're about 70% chance that we have it. So we can't meet the customer with their demands at that point, and that's was really troubling, realizing that. And it might even be that we have it in the store, but it's in the back stock. So that's one of the really big user case that with the technology, we can be sure that we can meet them with that when they have that demand for the product, and that means also that we can sell it at regular price, and we don't have to have a sale at the end of the season because we have it when they want it. That's key.
And we've talked clearly over the last year and a half or so about the journey, and so can you share a little bit with the audience about what that journey looks like and how you focused on fundamentals rather than trying to put in everything, and the pressure that you've had internally to try to keep things focused? I think it'd be beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah. So when for the first period of time, I need to get them to trust the technology within the organization and push out the message, what we're trying to do. And once we succeeded with that, it was like a snowball started rolling, and let's do smart mirrors, let's do ceiling readers, let's implement it in our DC. And so I was going from trying to convince that we're going to do this to kind of put on the brakes. Okay, we need to do this. We need to keep it simple because it's still going to be a big investment, and we need to do it at the right pace, and we need to do it right. So keep it simple will be one advice, and to get that foundation, a platform that's working, and then start building upon that. Because if we would go for everything and fail, we could not. Perhaps the technology wouldn't get the chance that it deserves. So keep it simple, get that foundation working, and then build up on that.
That's great. Jack, you come from the side of the business that is, or the side of the ecosystem where you're actually managing your own factories. Can you talk a little bit about, I think there's a myth out there that source tagging is a difficult thing to do, and you come from, they were your factories, or there were factories you guys managed. What was your experience as far as how the factories themselves responded to putting an RFID tag on something versus a non-RFID tag?
Yeah. So in our case, there was that concern, there was that conversation, but really at the end of the day, it didn't change the manufacturers or our partners or manufacturing facilities process, because the tag is the tag. So when they go through their manufacturing process and then they go through their trim process to apply the labels, it was pretty transparent. So whether I had our traditional barcoded tag with the human readable on it, we just simply inserted an RFID tag in that. So in terms of time, money, cost, effort to have our manufacturing locations to apply that tag, it was pretty minimal. So it actually worked out quite well. The accuracy rate when we received it to our facility, our DC, was pretty high. We didn't have a lot of issues with that, and I think it was a bit of a myth as to the challenge that it would take to do that.
No, you didn't have a lot of pushback from them once they realized they were just getting a ticket printed from their service bureaus. In this case, it was our service bureaus down to your factories.
Correct. Yeah.
And Johan, as you've gone through that process now, as you're rolling out, what did the dialogue look like internally about the source tagging? And how much pushback did you get, or concern did you get? And what are 50%, I think 50% of your business is from brands.
Yeah.
And so why don't you talk a little bit about both the source tagging and what you're going to do for your brand tagging strategy?
Yeah. So, as you said, 50% we control and produce ourselves, and 50% is brands. And what we control ourselves, we will source tag, and it's really, we are source tagging today. It's a regular price sticker. So the process is the same. So for me, it was actually really easy. It's just switch to an RFID sticker, and the process is the same. They order the same, they place it basically in the same way. So that was easy for us. And the brands that we tag today at our DC, and we do that today also with regular price stickers. So at our DC, we also had the process set up. So actually, it was a bit simplified, but putting in an RFID printer and use that instead of the normal printer that we have in our DC.
And you do that at inbound, right?
Yeah, we do that.
You can do that at inbound as you receive the product in from the brands.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's pretty much the same process because you're retagging everything anyway. For that process. Go ahead.
Just to mention too, is what we had at our facilities was IPP, in-plant printing. So rather than waiting on a service bureau, we could print the tags directly to the manufacturing facility on site, real time. It's last minute, so that you're printing the right quantity of tickets and or of tags, and that helped out as well. Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, you did have, in most cases, we're seeing retailers and brand owners have a hybrid. They've got to do some of both, and you guys both have seen that. Right. Kind of wrapping up, I mean, Jack, why don't you start? Kind of, if you were to give advice to the audience, there's dozens of brand owners and retailers here. What advice would you? Some of them are already far down in the process and their journey. Some are starting. What advice would you give them as as you've gone through this process?
Well, I would say do it and get it done, go for it. I think that, if you look at the RFID technology and where it's heading, in the apparel industry, about 10% of the apparel industry is currently using RFID tags, and that's growing about 30% year over the last few years. And that doesn't happen unless there's a return on that investment. And I know from my perspective, we wouldn't be doing it. My organization would not be doing this if we didn't feel that it didn't offer value to us and to our customers. So it is a growing technology. It's definitely, the cost is going down, the technology is getting better, the physics of it. Just in the time that we've been working with it, I think we've seen some great improvements in RFID technology in general. So I think that just, that kind of speaks for itself as far as where RFID is going. I'm a huge believer in RFID. It's working great for us. But, as a CIO, and, I think that my job has been to bring the right technology, the right people, processes, and technology to the business. And so the focus, and I think what's worked for us, is finding the right partner so that they can take care of the physics piece, they can take care of the RFID technology and the engineering, but then as an organization, work on, like Johan had mentioned, referred to, there's an organizational component because it does require some business process re-engineering, thinking outside the box, a little bit of learning curve internally to get the organization prepared. It takes some transformational leadership. And so I think that that's something you want to start preparing for as well. And it's not a one-day event. It takes time. It's an iterative process, both in terms of refining your business process as well as the technology and tuning. I know in our case it was a highly, I think it's very fair to say, it was a highly customized solution. And it just takes a little bit of time to work with that and continuing to go through these iterative cycles of continuous improvement, and you're going to get there. As I was referring to earlier, we would run our product through the first tunnel, and then we run it through a drive-through tunnel. The bales, the pallets on a high-low, you run it through the second tunnel, and that reads the bale and associates to the pallet. We're to a point at 99 plus 9% accuracy on that process. So it was a very effective technology, but it took some time. You got to be a little reasonable. It's a technology, but with the right team, the right resources, and the right organizational change acceptance and readiness and preparation, I think it's the way of the future.
That's great. How about you, Johan? I mean, what would you're coming at where you're relatively far down the journey. You've made the commitment to move forward in all your stores with all your product.
Yeah.
What would you give as far as advice out there today?
Yeah, so we're beginning of the implementation. Now we did a pilot, we were satisfied with that, and now we're implementing it. And really, what we're doing is, now lost what I was going to say. But I can start with saying that you start with keeping it simple and get that foundation working. That I think is key. And the technology, I had big respect for the technology when entering that, but after we did that pilot, and I realized the technology isn't difficult. It might be difficult behind the scenes, I don't know, but it's not difficult to implement. And as Jack said, it's my work is more about spreading the word within the organization. So I'm talking to controllers and buyers that now you're going to have data accuracy in that close to 100%. What's that going to mean to you? And to sales staff, now you're going to trust the system. When the customer comes and asks, you will be at the 100%. What does that mean to you? And to get the word out there, to get them thinking and see what can this do for me. That's the big part to be successful, I would say.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys. Both are very busy folks, and Johan, you've come all the way from Stockholm to be with us, but you guys were great partners to work with on these projects. And I think, Mark, if you'll come on out, we'll see if there's any questions for the panel. So, pulling Mark out here.
Okay.
It wasn't because of the panel, though.
No, oh, of course not. Of course not. Actually, I was just chatting with our next speaker. So, question here? Hold on a second. Let's just get a mic down here, right down the front.
You spoke a little bit about the downstream benefits of having the product already tagged with RFID for the retailer, and you also spoke a little bit about the internal logistics benefits and the operation side of receiving product. Also on the manufacturing side of the apparel business, it's my feeling that most of the time the retailers are using their own data set, their own ticketing requirements, their own tag specifics. I'm interested to learn how you integrated that with your back-end internal logistics piece to leverage and to realize that downstream benefit.
So you're referring to how do we leverage the tags that are applied at the manufacturing level all the way up to...
And through your business.
And through our business and through to the retailer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that correct? So we, in our, in the tags, we had, and Dean might have to help me out on some of this, more of the technical piece of it. But we basically kept the style, size, color, so in the tag, the SKU information in the tag. And we leveraged, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we leverage a lot of times when we get orders from our customer, we have a mapping, our SKU, what we call it versus what they call it. And so for particular orders, for particular customers, that's what would be encoded in the tag from the manufacturing facility all the way through our facility and then to the customer.
Yeah, and I'll add that, we went down the path of helping MyDyer and the end customer in many cases stick with a standard. We stuck with GS1 SG10s, and that made it so that all of Jack's customers that are requiring, his downstream customers that are requiring and are moving toward using item level RFID, Jack systems can support all of them. They have a different product catalog, they have a different style, size, and color, but the reality is by sticking with a standard, it allows MyDyer to be able to service all their customers that are doing the same thing. And so it makes that integration very straightforward with them. Their orders are coming in just like they always do, but it's in a language of SKU identifiers and SG10s as we go forward.
Thank you.
So I hope that answered the question, but yeah, the key is it's just based on standard. Stick to the standard because that's what it's designed to do.
Seems like it's all just strictly SKU driven.
Yeah, I mean, SKU is the identifier that drives basically your ability to do a count against an individual item reference. So,
It's right behind you.
So for Johan, when you know that the sales floor now has 100% of what's supposed to be there, one of the unintended consequences of RFID is it doesn't require the associate to make sure everything's organized so the customer can find it easily. Did you use RFID or any kind of technology to make sure the sales floor was organized for the customer's sake?
Not for the customer's sake. I would say, if I understand the question correctly, RFID would make the work easier for staff to find an article if it's misplaced by another customer and help them find that. So that will free up time for staff to help customers and to do other things. So we don't use the technology to say where to place things, but we use it to find things. Does that answer your question?
So if a customer, do you send the staff out onto the floor to do a quick scan of this area and say, oh, that item doesn't belong there, and then they pick it and they move it to the area it belongs? Is that part of their process?
No, not at this point. Could be in the future, and that could be things that, so we're building the platform and finding user cases. But really, we could say that when we hire staff, we hire sales staff, but But when we're analyzing what they are actually doing, they are more into logistics by moving things and finding things. And RFID will help them. They don't have to find things anymore, so they can go back to being sales staff that they love to do. So RFID will help with that.
Okay. Another question? Okay. She's coming right, she's been there in a second.
This is a question for both Jack and Johan. I'm wondering, do you do any RFID scans at the sourcing end of the spectrum? So when it's leaving the factory or going through a consolidator, or is your first scan really when it's arriving within your facility? And I'm just curious what the logic would be for your decision to capture your first scan at a certain point.
Yeah. So do you want to start, or?
Sure, so you're referring to at the beginning of the supply chain at the manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what our thought was, and as Johan had referred to earlier, I think it's important you kind of do this in pieces. You be strategic about how you roll out RFID. So our facilities, this would have been the next step, or it is the next step, is to basically arm them with the RFID technology to go ahead and take advantage of the outbound side of the shipping from the sourcing facilities. So right now it is a part of their manufacturing cycle, and then their trim cycle, they're putting a tag on the product. But not all of them right now are actually leveraging RFID to create, for instance, the ASN or to do the confirmed shipment on their end. So there's opportunities there, but right now that's not the case at all of our locations. And so because of that, and that's an opportunity because there are times when we receive, on our end, we will receive a shipment, and sometimes we do find discrepancies, right? Where, maybe they put the wrong tag on the right product, or they had, or maybe they missed a tag is possible. But at least now on our end, with the visibility we have, which we've never had before, is to be able to catch that when that happens. So that's definitely something, that's our desire, is to create that supply chain from end-to-end RFID supply chain, so that each entity along the way can take full advantage of RFID technology. So no, right now, not all of the facilities are armed with the RFID infrastructure to take advantage of the tags that they're shipping outbound. I hope that makes sense. Okay.
And from my point of view, the first scan would be at the store at the back stock, and we're as I was saying earlier, we do that first and make sure that works. But we are really interested in going into our DC also. We already have a plan to do that. And for instance, when we're picking at our DC, we will have an accuracy of perhaps 97% picking accuracy. And when we push that into the store each day, that's going to build up. And today with RFID, each week we're going to cancel that out and get back to the right stock levels. But to be able to have an RFID tunnel outbound from the DC and just stop the error right there would be, that's the next step. So we are absolutely going to push this into the entire supply chain.
I was going to add that watching these two organizations close up go through the process, they Paretoed what was most important to make the most impact. And they focused, both of them uniquely focused, and what we're seeing from other customers, what is the big hairy problem? Go focus on that first, that's top priority, and this concept of a foundation, and then knock off the second and the third tiers of that Pareto analysis is what we've watched these two organizations do through that. And I highly recommend that, because then you're going to come away with a good basis for an ROI, pays for tags, pays for technology, and the marginal cost to do those additional processes are relatively low. So,
okay. I have another question over here in the front. A quick question while the mic is coming down. Dean, is there a sort of a generic RFID tag that's going to work for 90% of apparel, or do you have to spend time to figure out, based on the product category, what tag you want to use?
Yeah, so what's interesting is if you look back 5 years ago, I think we at SML had probably 15 inlays. Okay, the reality is the market as it developed zeroed in on a couple of sizes. So everybody who's an inlay tag provider's got a 50 by 30 millimeter. Everybody's got a 40 by 15. We're now seeing smaller ones that are 30 by 15 and so on. And those make up the bulk of the market, which is good for everybody. Right. Because we're generating now billions of volume across that, so are our competitors as well. So it's nice to see the market mature to a place where we're not dealing with a lot of inlay decisions. It's more about how does it fit on your product that drives the inlay design. So.
Right, okay. Got a question here?
Hi, thank you. My question is for Johan. In terms of RFID, the benefit, the ROI, was it an increased sales or a reduction of inventory investment? Did you determine that information from your pilot?
Yeah, we did, and we could have a huge list of benefits. So we focused on two, and with the higher inventory accuracy, that would lead to higher sales in quantity. So that's one thing. But the second thing that's really good also is that we're going to sell at a higher average price. Because we're going to meet the customer when the customer is prepared to pay. So to sell at a higher price, you already had the product produced, the supply, go through the supply chain. To be able to have a higher average price, that's money right into your pocket. So that's a huge thing. So we zeroed in on those two things in our business case.
One more question. Did you have to shield your backstock area so when you took inventory in the stores, you wouldn't capture separate inventories?
Yeah, and that's a part of our business case as well. So we shielded between backstock and sales floor to make it possible to replenish, and that was really crucial to do that. In our case, at least, the more SKUs you have and the more processes you have, the higher value it would be to get RFID to help you with that. Because as I think I said earlier, when we turned on the replenishment, we had hundreds of SKUs in the backstock that was not present on the sales floor. So yeah, we shielded, and that was a crucial thing for us.
Okay. Another question? Okay, I'll ask a question. So in our last session, Deirdre mentioned that there was stopping and starting due to lack of buy-in. How did you get your organizations to buy in and realize that there was going to be a lot of value in this?
I don't know if I understand the question correctly, but what got us to do this was realizing that we are at 70% inventory accuracy, and that's not a platform we can stand on to build omni-channel and to meet the customer.
Did the CEO get that immediately, that RFID could get you from 70 to 95 or better?
No, that was a journey in itself, and kind of some soul searching for us as an organization to realize that okay, we're not at 98% that we believed at that long time. So it was a journey, but the pilot showed the results, and we could also see. So our belief was that higher inventory accuracy would lead to higher sales, and the pilot showed that as well. So then the CEO and the board were convinced and onto it.
Jack?
Yeah, and so for us, really kind of our business vision is we want to be very innovative and kind of strategic and creative in apparel. And we kind of have a grander vision, I would say, and that's to see in the apparel industry that RFID technology throughout your whole supply chain, because we do believe that there's huge benefits and ROI for us and our partners, and especially our customers. So we were very customer focus oriented because, again, we know that we have several customers that are currently working on POCs of their own, and they're considering RFID. So we wanted to put ourselves in a position with the technology to provide that service as part of our full-scale service to our customers. So that was really a priority that drove our business decision. But we also did a bit of a POC where, as mentioned earlier, and I didn't get into too many details, but the process in the operational process within our facility to receive bales and to go through this bit of a process to enter units into our system was clunky. And we felt that there was savings there that we could eventually pass on to our customer, both in terms of time, offloading the truck, the time to offload the shipment, the time to prepare the pallets, the time to transfer them and put them away. And so we did a time study. SML built our first kind of prototype for us, and we kind of did a comparison. And at the end of the day, yes, the time, money, and effort was a bit of a difference. And that we felt alone was an opportunity for us and a reason to implement RFID. So those were probably the two primary drivers.
One thing I would add, Mark, is having gone through the journey with both of these firms and these individuals, is that in Jack's case, he had a market demand that he needed to do something and an imperative to put it in place. And that process was probably what we went through 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
And it was just a gradual climb to deployment. In Johan's case, he did a pilot, and that was executed. And like we see with most retailers, they do a pilot, they get the business case, they request funds for the next fiscal year, they get the RFP in place, they do the RFP for the tender, and then they make the decision, and then they roll out. And so while that process is an 18-month process for a typical retailer, it never really stops, okay? It's just a continual process that moves into different stages, I think. Is that fair, Johan? Yeah.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Please join me in thanking our panel. Great job, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jack, thank you.